May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. What a reading for us to have on our first time live streaming a service here at Freshwater. Friends, I don't know about you, but I love order. I'm a fan of knowing what's coming next. In the morning, I like to get up, make my kids breakfast, make myself some breakfast, and if what I was planning on having isn't in the cupboard, it can kind of throw me off. Or heaven forbid, the coffee is run out. That's almost the end of my morning. The order's been disrupted, and it feels like everything goes downhill from there. We have an idea that order is what gives us life. Order is what makes us feel safe. It makes us feel comfortable. Order is the thing that allows us to live successfully. I wonder if that isn't always true. I wonder if through Christ there's another message. Now, we've just heard the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. What a remarkable thing. It is an absolutely incredible story, one in which we get the most raw human emotion. Rawer than really anywhere else in the gospel from Jesus, apart from potentially in the Garden of Gethsemane there. Jesus is doing something that I'm sure we have all done at some point in our life. He's weeping for a friend. Now, maybe we haven't wept for the loss of a friend. I'm sure some of us have. But there are times in friendships, in families, where we too weep at loss. And Jesus did the same. But when Jesus rose Lazarus to life, was he really bringing order? I would suggest that, in fact, Jesus was actually disrupting the natural order. Throwing order off kilter. And that's what amazed so many people. But from this disorder, from this distortion of what we see as natural things, Jesus brought life. Not only life, but liberation and freedom. There's a couple of interesting little things, especially for our situation as we're going through it now as a society, that we can pick up from this gospel that may have something important to speak to us. One of those things is that when Jesus raised Lazarus, the death cloths were still on him. Now, Lazarus heard the call of Jesus first before he came out. He heard that call. He was brought back to life. He was liberated from his tomb. But a part of that death remained with him. The cloths that he was wrapped in and laid in that tomb were still on him as he came out. So I wonder what that could potentially say about us. And we're going through an extremely tough situation now as a society. I'm sure we can be confused. We certainly feel like our order has been disrupted. But let's remember where this incredible miracle sits in the gospel. This says something extremely important about Jesus, and it's one of a long stream of different things said about him. Previously, we've had Jesus referred to as the living water, the bread of life, the light of the world, and now even further, the light of the world, yes, but also the resurrection and the life. Just as we read so beautifully at the beginning, the valley of dry bones from that wonderful Old Testament passage. There are times, and perhaps now is one of those, where we may feel like the life has been sucked out of us. Maybe as a church, maybe as a group who's used to having contact with friends and family, Maybe that's restricted now. We may feel like that life's being taken away, in at least some sense. But what Jesus did was disrupt that natural order. And that didn't bring despair like it does for me if there's no coffee in the morning. In fact, it brought life and wholeness again and liberation. So we have some questions to ask ourselves, I think. Just as the death bandages were left on Lazarus, there will be something left of this quarantine, this virus, this pandemic. Once it's all over, once everything's settled down, that joyous day when we can come back together again, there will be something left. We will forever be affected by this. But what will that be? I don't know about you. Well, if you're watching this now, I assume that you use social media, or at least you're sort of delving into that unknown sea now of social media to join us, and thank you for that if you're doing that. But I check social media every now and then. And what I've noticed in the last few years is there seems to be a kind of an understanding that not being with people or staying away from people is almost a virtue. Being this sort of wise introvert or retreating and not being with people. And the idea that those who love to be with people are almost less than in some of our memes. You don't often see the positive ones about the extrovert. Usually they're the annoying ones talking someone's head off, similar to where I am now. And the introverts are the ones who are the wise ones who stay away from that. Now, I wonder now that we've had separation from each other, whether we can learn some things about our society again. Our order has been fractured, it's been disrupted. It reminds us just how fragile everything is when it comes to the economy, when it comes to our social makeup, our relationships. Times like these disrupt our fragile system. But so did Jesus. And it didn't bring despair, it brought life. So when this is over, how are we going to interact again? What will we take out of this? Out of that little piece that is still there affecting us? How will we reshape the way we do things together? Maybe we'll be more compassionate. Maybe we'll be more loving. Or maybe we'll forget about it in a couple of weeks and just go on as business as usual. Friends, I think that would be a loss if we did. Jesus raised Lazarus, but remember, Jesus himself was resurrected. His clothes were left where he was laying when he was resurrected. There was nothing of death left on him for all of us. So how do we proclaim that resurrection? We can say until our throats get sore that we believe Jesus rose, but if we don't live to that, really, what does it mean? What did Jesus' resurrection do? What did his raising of Lazarus do? Well, it brought life, yes, but it also brought liberation. It brought joy to those who needed it the most. I think theologian, philosopher Peter Rollins puts it really well when he says, I deny the resurrection of Christ every time I do not serve at the feet of the oppressed. Each day that I turn my back on the poor, I deny the resurrection of Christ when I close my ears to the cries of the downtrodden and lend my support to an unjust and corrupt system. However, there are moments when I affirm that resurrection, few and far between as they are. I affirm when I stand up for those who are forced to live on their knees, when I speak of those, for those who have had their tongues torn out, when I cry for those who have no more tears left to be shed. So friends, it's lovely to be able to get together and worship. I'd like to leave us with this question. How do we live out the resurrection? Through this time when we are separate, how can we best live out the true hope that is in the resurrected Christ? How do we worship him with our actions when we can't quite be together? And then when all of this is over, and it will be, and we are back together again, how will that change us? Are we willing to remember this time and allow it to adapt the way we behave together? And how will we allow that to happen within our lives? So let us each proclaim the resurrection, not just in words, but in actions. Let us give great thanks to God. And let us come together in any way we can to worship and to care for one another. In the name of God, the Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen.